Hi, this is Zoe, and welcome to the podcast where we talk about boundless leadership, strategies to lead a boundless life, team, and organization, where we dive into topics on culture, strategic thinking, and personal excellence. Today, we're talking about deep play and how to run a work-life experiment. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, your source of strategies and insights to make you a better leader. Influence, improve, inspire.
So I'm back from 4 weeks of our work-life experiment, living and working from the snowfields. We have a little lodge up at Gethiga, where we've been going for the last, 12 years or so. And this year we decided, how could we extend our time at the snow while still getting work done? So we decided to do an experiment. Could we make it work? Could we ski and do work and keep things ticking over? That was our hypothesis, and after 4 weeks, I can report on what happened and what worked and what didn't. I wrote a blog post about this also, which I will put in the show notes at zoerouth.com/podcast/work-life-experiment. And so you can get some insights into the blog that way. But today I want to talk about 3 different things that we need to focus on when we're talking about the blending of work, rest, and play. And I love that idea of work-life blending. And I got that from Dan Gregory and Kieran Flanagan, who are Australian thought leaders in the creative and innovation space. And the idea of work-life blending is an interesting one, and I think it's apt, because a lot of us don't think work is a chore. We do it because we love it. And we do it in all sorts of different places and times, and we fit work to our lifestyle. And we design life and work by design, if you like. And so this idea of blending work and life is different to work-life balance. And I think when work-life balance came out, the concept was, everybody's working too hard. We need to balance it out with rest and play. And I think there's elements that are true about both those things and something else that we need to consider. What's true about work-life balance is that we do need different gears to move into. We need to do work, we need to do rest, we need to do play. So there needs to be some sort of balance between all of that. Is it equal share? Not necessarily. And that's where the work-life blending concept came into play. And the blending piece is like, well, you don't want to have strict rules like a third of life is work, a third is sleep, and a third is play. Actually, we're coming close to saying that a third of life is asleep, because we do need a certain amount of sleep. So that maybe that part is true. The other part, not necessarily. It doesn't mean like an even pie. And what Dan and Kieran talk about is the blending of the two. How can we have work and play and rest all squished in together? What I discovered in our work-life experiment from the snow is this, and it leads into the 3 concepts I want us to experiment with when we're thinking about the combination of work, rest, and play more broadly. So the lessons from the snow are this. First of all, in a work-life experiment where you endeavor to extend your time in a holiday place by adding in work so you can keep work ticking over, is to really focus on the fact that it's not a holiday. And I think this is my first big challenge. We went up to the place where we normally have a holiday, and so the location was really associated with down tools, fun. And so the idea of then inserting work into that was kind of difficult, and it created a sense of resentment almost in some ways that I had to do work when I'm supposed to be on holiday. That was the subconscious or barely above conscious line. It's like, oh, this is my holiday place. Why am I working? And I think if you go in with the attitude that it's a holiday and you're just going to squeeze work in, you're setting yourself up for failure, because what ends up happening is when you're out having fun skiing, you're thinking about the work that you need to do. And when you're doing the work, you're thinking, I'd rather be skiing. And you end up with this kind of like mother's guilt that I hear about, where if you're at work, you feel guilty because you're not with your kids, or you're with your kids, you feel guilty because you're not doing work. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that in a work-life experiment where no matter what we're doing, we feel bad because we're not doing the other thing. That's not helpful. So how do we deal with that? Well, we embrace the fact that, A, it's not a holiday, and that it has different rules and different ways of focusing. And I think what we need to be mindful of in the work-life experiment is is how we containerize the activity that we're doing. And I think this is really essential. When we look at the combination of rest, work, and play, there's intersections between them. And it's in the intersections that we can create new rules and new activities to make each of those areas work best. I want to talk a little bit about Deep Work, which is the book by Cal Newport. And he wrote that recently. And the main premise is, because of our distracted world, we're not getting the deep work done that we need to do. The deep thinking, the deep planning, the deep creating in order to create work that is transformational. So he basically says that we need to clear the decks, close the doors, and have big chunks of time where we can dive deeply into the issues that matter most to us in our work. And I like this idea of deep work. Yeah, it's like, when do I actually be developmental and transformative in my work without really spending some good chunk of time diving deeply into something? So the idea of deep work is pretty important. I think the idea of deep play is also important. And it comes back to my first point about work-life experiments are not a holiday. And I think there is still value in actually having a holiday, which is deep play. For what is the purpose of a holiday? It's to down tools. It's to give your brain a chance to think about something different, to relieve pressure, to let your body repair, and let you enjoy different aspects of your world. And I think with this advent of technology, it's kind of interrupted this idea of a holiday, because we can take our gadgets with us, which means we're always connected to work. And lots of people have written about the infringement of work into areas where we're supposed to be rebooting. And I think if we're going to put boundaries around deep work, I think we need to put boundaries around deep play as well. And so I think we can have work-life experiments, and I'll talk about the things to consider when we're doing that. And I think we also still need to include a space where we can just have play. And that's all it is. It's its sole purpose, and it's honored in its own right. The other container, the other, sphere we need to manage is rest. Arianna Huffington has written about this extensively in her book Thrive and in her website Thrive Global. The idea that we need to actually honor the fact that our bodies and brains need to rest with good sleep, with decompression, with meditation, with mindfulness is really important. I think the critical thing, the way to think about all of these things, deep work, deep rest, and deep play, is the idea that we have different gears, different modes that we're in our life and work. And we need to be mindful of how we shift gears and how we manage that. And that comes to the 3 points I want to make about managing deep work, rest, and play. In the intersection between deep work and deep play, for me, I think the strategy to manage this, especially in a work-life experiment, is managing your environment effectively. So Cal Newport talks about having areas where you can be distraction-free to do your deep work. And I think this is really critical if you're going to do a work-life experiment. Do you have the right environment that you can just take up tools and do your deep work, where you're not going to get distracted by the view of the beautiful mountains and wish longingly that you're out there swooshing down the slopes? So the idea is choosing your environments very specifically and being deliberate about that. Can you do your deep work in a condensed period of time and then go out and play? And likewise, if you're going back to a holiday home or a holiday place, is to really think about that, and where can you carve out the space to do deep work, and where can you carve out the boundary into where you're going to be playing. I think it's the same concept we've had since people started working from home, right? Like, people struggle with that because they associated home with home stuff, and you got distracted by doing laundry or cleaning the kitchen or doing that kind of stuff. It's a similar concept, but just from a different destination. You need to have the right environments to do the activities that you're meant to be doing. So managing environments and focusing on space about how you're managing each of those areas of activity, work, rest, and play, is critical. The second transition, or the second intersection, I should say, between deep play and deep rest is all about pace, and that's about changing gears. And I think this is really important, because if we don't think about how we change gears, we tend to grind them a little bit. So we might go from play, burn ourselves out, drink too much, party too much, and then fall in a heap. This is not good gear changing. We need to be mindful of the pace that we're doing in each of those activities, and we need to have a variety of paces. So I think with play, it can be easygoing play, and it can also be hard charging play. So with skiing, it's hard charging. It's fast-paced, exhausting work, and therefore the transition from that into deep rest is really important. One of the dangers of doing a skiing holiday is that you get caught up in the culture of being on a ski holiday with the other people in the lodge. It's like, it's time to pull out the nice cheeses and the nice wines and have big, expansive dinners. And all of a sudden, you're not recovering well enough. You haven't changed the pace well enough. You're kind of blending the concept of a holiday with work, and you end up wearing yourself out. So the change of pace is really important. And I think we need to be mindful that when we go from one activity to an area, that we do actually consciously change the pace. And it's also about changing not just the pace of doing, but the pace of thinking and the pace of being. And this is something I really want to focus on ongoing when I'm thinking about the different areas of my life, is that change of pace is really important, because often I'll go hard charging right up to bedtime and then try and shut down, and my brain is just firing on all cylinders. I don't get a great sleep. I wake up in the middle of the night. Not good. So that change of pace piece is really important. And Arianna Huffington talks a lot about this in terms of having nighttime rituals and stuff. And I think that's pretty important. The third aspect of overlap between deep work and deep rest is transition. And it's similar to the idea of creating rituals to get us from one aspect of our day into the next. And Adam Fraser wrote a book about this called Third Space. And his key concept was, when you go from work and then you go home, there's that third space. It's your opportunity to decompress, to process, to reflect, to change your emotional set point so that when you go home, you can be fully present to the people and your place there. And likewise, when you leave home, if you have troubles at home, that you use the space of travel from home to work to get focused and ready for the day. And being deliberate in our transition spaces is really important. One of the things I do with my Leaders Edge Mastermind is we talk about routines. And there's a morning routine, there's the end of day routine, and there's the end of night routine. And they're all about setting us up for success in managing those transitions between each of those activity areas. And I think when we're deliberately conscious about that, it helps us manage the pace better. And it helps us put containers or segments around each of our focus areas. So if we're going to talk about blending work and life, I think we need to be mindful of each of those spheres, and so that they are blended well and not bleeding into one another. And I think that is the danger. If we work, and then go to bed, that's bleeding work into rest. It's not blending nicely. It's not making a good, smooth transition. We're kind of grinding gears, if you like, just to mix up a few metaphors in there. So we need to segment. We need to manage transitions. We need to have rituals and routines that help us move from one place to another. We need to change pace. So what I'm doing in my morning routine is getting up, having my tianqi, which is my adaptogenic herbs. I am meditating and checking my heart rate variability, and then I'm setting myself intentions for the day. So I'm getting set up and focused for the day. So that's part of deep rest, moving into transition and moving into a different pace. At the end of the workday, one of the things I want to do is write in my success journal the things that I achieved that day, the things that I'm pleased about, and then shut down everything on my desk. One thing I haven't been able to commit to, or haven't committed to, let's say, I haven't committed to, is then to do another meditation piece then. And it's something that my meditation teacher taught us to do, is that you should be incorporating in meditation 3 times a day. So far, I've only committed to once a day, and that's in the morning. I'd like to commit to incorporating it into the end of the day, because it's important for that transition piece, that gear change. So finishing work, success journal, clearing off the desk, shutting down the computer, those are all signals, that down tools, and meditation is the gear shifter. The end of night routine, one of the things that I'm really bad at is social media right before bed. So brain is stimulated. I've got the blue light glasses. I haven't been using them, so I want to get those back on. And it's basically shutting down screens and doing another meditation. So those are the commitments for my gear shifting and my rituals to manage those transitions, and so on. I'd love to hear what works for you. It'd be great to hear from you. You can send me an email, zoe@innercompass.com.au, or put a note on the podcast show notes page, which is at zoerouth.com/podcast/work-life-experiment. Enjoy. I'd love to hear your reflections. I encourage you to have your own work-life experiment. In the meantime, live well, lead well.